Welcome to Death Row, Florida, the series where we uncover the real, unfiltered stories behind Florida's most chilling executions. This episode dives deep into the life and crimes of Glen Edward Rogers, known to the media as the Casanova Killer or the cross-country killer. But behind the headlines and tabloid nicknames lies a story far more twisted than charm and seduction. This is the full, disturbing truth. Glen Rogers was born in 1962 in Hamilton, Ohio. He was the second youngest of 7 children in a home that was neither stable nor safe. His father was an alcoholic who often exploded into violent rages, breaking windows, punching holes in walls, and firing his gun just outside their house. When his drinking caused him to lose his job at a local paper mill, the family spiraled into poverty. They moved into a rundown house in one of Hamilton's poorest neighborhoods. Inside the Rogers home, things were even worse. Their mother, frequently battered, inflicted severe punishments on her children if they disturbed their father's drunken naps. Outside of those moments, discipline was non-existent. The Rogers kids learned quickly how to lie, steal, and hustle. By the time Glen was a teenager, he had racked up an extensive juvenile record. What the public didn't know until decades later was just how deeply Glen Rogers was damaged as a child. Court records from his federal appeals revealed horrifying accounts of prolonged sexual abuse. When he was just 10 years old, Rogers was repeatedly raped by a woman in his hometown until she moved on to another boy. That same year, he started spending time in a local brothel, referred to as the Cat House, where older women and men used him for sex. One of his older brothers began pimping him out to get drug money. 2 women, named in court filings, sexually assaulted Glen, then trafficked him to men who produced child pornography. At age 11, he began working for a man described as a notorious child molester who ran a radio repair shop. The man gave him gifts and attention, classic grooming behavior, and then demanded sexual favors in return. The abuse was constant, the trauma was buried. By the time Rogers hit puberty, he was hooked on drugs and well known to juvenile authorities. He was sent to the Training Institution of Central Ohio, a juvenile detention center that has since been shut down. There, he claimed he was sexually abused by guards, beaten by staff, and held in solitary confinement for long stretches. One night, he was taken from his cell and forced to dig a grave. Later, he said a boy's body was placed in it. The damage was permanent. Glen Rogers emerged from childhood broken, violent, and capable of almost anything. As a young adult, Rogers bounced between odd jobs: cab driver, carnival worker, house painter. He was charismatic, funny, dangerous. By his late 20s, he'd been arrested more than 25 times, mostly for theft, burglary, and assault. He roamed from town to town, bar to bar, charming women with lies, drinks, and that eerie smile. But by the mid-1990s, that charm turned deadly. 1994, Northern Kentucky. A kind old man named Mark Peters let Glen Rogers stay at his house. Peters was later found tied to a chair in a cabin, dead. Though the exact cause was unclear, signs of restraint and trauma were present. His home had been ransacked. Rogers vanished shortly after. September 1995, Van Nuys, California. Sandra Gallagher was a mother of 3. She had just won the lottery, $1,250, and was celebrating at McRed's Cocktail Lounge. Rogers charmed her, danced with her, left with her. The next morning her truck was found incinerated. Her body was inside, strangled and burned. October 1995, Mississippi. Linda Price met Rogers at a beer tent at the state fair. They moved in together almost immediately. Within weeks, she was found in their shared apartment, stabbed in the bathtub. Neighbors recalled hearing arguments. No one acted. November 1995, Tampa, Florida. Tina Marie Cribbs met Rogers at Showtown, USA. She was a loving mother of two, known for her kindness. Rogers bought her drinks, flattered her, asked for a ride. She agreed. She was never seen alive again. 2 days later, Tina's body was discovered in room 119 at the Tampa 8 Inn. She had been stabbed multiple times and left in the bathtub. Her car and wallet were gone. Fingerprints led directly to Rogers. The investigation intensified. Authorities found that Rogers had used Tina's stolen car to flee the state. Her wallet was discovered at a rest area in northern Florida, bearing his fingerprints. Using motel guest records, surveillance footage and credit card trails, law enforcement narrowed his path across multiple states. The FBI issued a nationwide bulletin. In Louisiana, Rogers was seen dancing at a bar with Andy Giles Sutton. When her body was discovered days later, nude, stabbed and left on a waterbed, the pattern was clear. He was spiraling. Kentucky State Police spotted Rogers driving Cribbs' car. He refused to stop. A high-speed chase followed, ending in a crash near Richmond. Rogers fled on foot into the woods. When officers finally caught him, he was disoriented, aggressive, and reportedly muttered, "You finally got me." In custody, his attitude shifted from denial to twisted pride. In some interviews, he hinted at having killed more than 5 people. He smirked when discussing certain details. To detectives, it was clear. They were dealing with a man who not only killed, but relished in the attention that came with it. He was extradited back to Florida. His trial began in Tampa. The evidence was overwhelming. DNA, fingerprints, motel records, stolen property. The prosecution built a portrait of a serial killer. The defense tried to shift the narrative. Abuse, trauma, mental illness. It wasn't enough. In 1997, Glen Rogers was convicted of first-degree murder for the killing of Tina Cribbs. The jury deliberated for less than a day. They unanimously voted for death. Rogers appealed repeatedly over the years. His attorneys pointed to new psychological evaluations, trauma evidence, and questions of ineffective counsel. They argued that jurors never heard the full truth, but the courts ruled against him, again and again. In the final years, Rogers grew quiet, reserved. He filed a final appeal citing exposure to lethal injection drugs and the cruelty of death row conditions. On May 10, 2025, Governor Ron DeSantis signed his death warrant. On June 12, 2025, Glen Rogers was executed at Florida State Prison. He declined a last meal. He declined to make a final statement. At 6:18 p.m. he was pronounced dead. No family came to claim his body. The families of his victims, Cribbs, Gallagher, Price, Sutton, were left to pick up the pieces. Some never got justice in court, but Florida made sure at least one of them did. This is the legacy of Glen Rogers, a man moulded by trauma but defined by the pain he inflicted. And this is where the facts speak louder than excuses. Subscribe for more, because every name on death row has a story, and some are darker than others.